Hey guys, it's Ms.A, and in this lesson, we're going to be analyzing the effect that sensory details and figurative language have on the mood of a text. So that is our learning target, and in order for us to be successful, we're going to have to know and identify what the mood of a text is. We have to understand how authors can use details, descriptions, and figurative language to develop mood, and we have to be able to analyze how specific details in A Sound of Thunder help develop the mood of that story. Have you ever heard someone say it's the little things that matter? In everyday life, little things can make you happy, sad, annoyed, or excited. In literature and poetry, the little things that matter are the words that are chosen very carefully by the author. You always have to think that when an author's writing, they have the entire language at their disposal, so they can choose any words they want to describe the specific situation, the specific characters in their book. So when they finally choose that word, you're going to have to assume that those words are meaningful, because what if they had chosen another word? They did have the ability, they weren't limited. Words affect the meaning of a story. They establish the tone, aka how the author feels about the topic that they're writing about, or it can also affect the attitude of the narrator or the speaker. Word choice also is important because it can create the mood or the atmosphere in a story or poem. Remember, many times people mistake tone and mood. They think it's the same thing. But you always have to remember that tone is the way the author feels and mood is the way you or the character feels. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the same thing, although oftentimes it is. Now, mood gets developed through a lot of different authors' techniques. So what we're really talking about here is we're talking about the author's craft. These are the different strategies or techniques that an author has in their toolbox that they can use as they're writing to develop the mood. It can be descriptive language, right? So very specific adjectives, adverbs, vivid verbs. Sensory details. So really appealing, having descriptions that appeal to the five senses. Describing what the sounds are like, what the sights are, what the feelings are. Using figurative language, so using personification, hyperbole, metaphors, similes. Word choice. Again, are they describing the character as being chubby or being obese? They mean very similar things, but the connotations of the words are a little bit different. So that can affect the way that we interpret the character, the way that we see the character. The setting, right? Obviously, if you want to have a scary story, having a spooky setting is definitely going to help create that mood better than having it be in a happy location. And then, of course, there are character reactions, right? If a character's scared, you're more readily going to feel that fear along with the character. All right, so let's look at an example. Here we have a description from a passage. It says, "The mysterious man stumbled down the cold, dark alley, pulling his coat tightly around him in the midnight air." What mood does this sentence create? Again, how does it make you feel when you read these descriptions? All right, so obviously we're going to say that this is kind of a little bit of a mysterious kind of mood. Now, what words help establish this mood? What words are giving an air of mystery? Well, obviously, the word mysterious, but that's the easy answer. Even if we took this word out, I still would have said that it's a mysterious mood because he's stumbling down the cold, dark alley, which brings an air of mystery. What's causing him to stumble? Is he sick? Is he drunk? And the fact that he pulls his coat tightly around him is an action people usually do when they're scared or they're trying to be covert. And then even this description of the midnight air is a very mysterious kind of description. They could have just said that it was a cold winter morning, it's the middle of the night, but midnight air just kind of, it sounds cool, sounds poetic, but it also sounds mysterious. All right, so now we're going to apply our knowledge to the story A Sound of Thunder. And I'm going to model for you how I would find text evidence that helps create the mood of that story. So I'm going to find my text evidence. I'm going to identify which of the techniques we looked at from the previous slide, just to remind you. Descriptive language, sensory details, figurative language, word choice, setting, or character reactions. Which technique is the author using? And then I'm going to analyze it. What mood is being created? How does the technique help create that mood? So when I think back on the story, it seems very obvious to me that any talk of mood is going to bring me to the part of the story where they're actually in the past with the dinosaurs. The descriptions of the jungle, the descriptions of the dinosaur, especially the T-Rex, is really the parts I think of when I think about the mood of the story. So I'm starting off with the description when they first get there and they start to see that there are pterodactyls in the sky. The jungle was high and the jungle was broad, and the jungle was the entire world forever and forever. Sounds like music and sounds like flying tents filled the sky, and those are pterodactyls soaring with cavernous gray wings, gigantic bats of delirium and night fever. All right, so what stands out to me from this description? And the jungle is broad, so I really picture like it's huge. It was the entire world forever and forever, right? That is hyperbole right there. It cannot literally be the entire world. I mean, I guess it could, but I know that's not what they really mean. There's oceans, so it's not the entire world. Sounds like music. I see a simile comparing the sounds to music. Sounds like flying tents. I mean, when I hear that, I can just really, I'm putting myself in the character's shoes. If I heard something in the air and it sounded like a huge tent that was flying, I would get terrified. Cavernous, right? When I hear the adjective cavernous, I think of a cave. So their wings are being described as if they're as big as a cave. Gigantic. I mean, that's there. That's not even as good as the other words, but yeah, they're gigantic. It's not just big, right? This has a very strong connotation. You could even say that this is diction. You've got so much going on here. Delirium and night fever, right? Night fever is like where you're like so sick and you're delirious. That's what a delirium is, right? You're delirious. You don't know what's going on. So it's that sick kind of like crazy feeling. So definitely figurative language is one of the main techniques that's being used here, but we also saw that diction is part of it too. I'm going to focus on the figurative language though, because that initial simile of the pterodactyls sounding like flying tents is what scares me the most and really gives me that mood here. The sound of the wings, what does it mean? The sound of the wings is so loud and the creatures themselves are humongous. I am terrified when I imagine being these hunters and hearing that noise. So how does it contribute to the overall meaning of the story? Yeah, all right, it creates a mood. It terrifies me. But what's the overall purpose? When I think about the development of the story, if I'm Ray Bradbury, what am I trying to get my readers to understand through these descriptions? Well, these descriptions are setting the scene, and they're establishing the terror of the jungle. Knowing how terrifying the setting and the situation is, this foreshadows Eccles' fear and his inability to shoot the T-Rex later on. So this is one of my first clues that this place is so scary. It would be reasonable to predict, and that's what you do with foreshadowing. Those are hints of what's going to happen later on in the story. It's reasonable to predict that at least one character, if not all of them, are going to be so terrified that they're not going to be able to shoot the T-Rex. All right, now let's do the guided practice. So for our second piece of evidence, we have descriptions of the T-Rex. The tyrant lizard raised itself, its armored flesh glittered like 1,000 green coins. The coins, crusted with slime, steamed. In the slime, tiny insects wriggled so that the entire body seemed to twitch and undulate, even while the monster itself did not move. It exhaled. The stink of raw flesh blew down the wilderness. All right, so again, what is standing out from this description? All right, so we have armored flesh. So you're picturing as if it's a warrior in an armor, and it's glittering like 1,000 green coins. But the coins are crusted with slime and they're steaming, which sounds gross. And then even this, tiny insects are wriggling on the body of the T-Rex. It seems as if, because those insects are there moving, it seems like the dinosaur's body is moving. And then the stink of raw flesh. I mean, you can see those are very, very strong descriptions. So now take a moment. What technique is being used? What does it mean? How does it affect the mood? And then how does that contribute to the overall meaning of the story? What is it that Ray Bradbury overall wants us to realize about the plot of the story, the characters, what's going to happen next? You got to think bigger picture here. All right, so obviously, I mean, I kind of said it even when we were identifying the words. The technique is sensory details, right? There's descriptions that are going. You could have even said descriptive language, and that would have been correct. There are a lot of strong adjectives and vivid verbs. So, I mean, really, descriptive language and sensory details are pretty much the same thing. Here, the adjectives and the verbs are appealing to the senses, though. That's why I picked sensory details over just descriptive language, because you've got the sense of smell right here and the sense of sight, both. And then you also have the simile, flesh glittering, being compared to coins. Now, what does it mean? Well, it's basically just trying to establish that the T-Rex is a disgusting beast that is so ponderous, so huge, that it even has small bugs living on its skin. These are very, very scary images, which means that the mood is awesome. Like, not awesome like it's cool, although for some people it would be, but like, it's inspiring awe or wonder within you. It's terrifying, maybe even hypnotic, right? Because you might see this beast and you might freeze, like almost like you've been hypnotized with fear. Now, how does that contribute or influence the overall meaning of the story? Well, again, they're establishing the terrifying mood. Why? To help the reader visualize what the dinosaur looks like. Knowing how scary it is makes it easy to predict that Eccles will freak out and not be able to kill it because he's nervous at the start of the story. All right, so now it's time to complete the rest of your mood chart. When you're done, you can share out your responses with a new partner or group, which means that while you work on the chart, you can work with a partner or you can work in a small group together. And of course, we'll go over the responses and put them in the inbox when we are done.